There is a moment you have had 1,000 times and never thought about once. You are walking through a crowded room, and someone says your name. Not loudly, not directed at you across the silence. Just your name, spoken at a normal volume somewhere in the noise. And you hear it, instantly, precisely, as if a spotlight turned on in the middle of a storm. You didn't decide to hear it. You didn't scan the room, filter the conversations, check each voice one by one. It happened before you had any say in the matter, before thought, before choice. That is not a coincidence. That is not luck. That is a system so fast, so precise, so incomprehensibly sophisticated that the most powerful computers ever built cannot come close to doing what it does, and it is running inside you right now, without a single instruction from you, without a moment of rest, without ever making a mistake. You don't survive. It is the nervous system, and you are about to see it completely differently. Let's start with something that happens so fast you will never consciously experience it. You reach toward a hot stove. Your fingertips make contact with the surface, and before your brain has registered anything, before you have felt pain, before you have thought the word hot, before any part of your conscious mind has been consulted, your hand is already moving away, already gone. The signal that pulled your hand back never went to your brain at all. It went to your spinal cord, a column of bundled nerve tissue running down the center of your back, and the spinal cord made a decision alone, in milliseconds, and sent a command back down before your brain had even received the news that something was happening. By the time you feel the pain, the danger is already over. Your body protected you before you knew you needed protecting. That is a reflex, and it is one of the most elegant things biology has ever produced, an emergency bypass system, routing around the slowest part of the decision-making process to keep you alive in a fraction of a second where speed is everything. But here is what makes it extraordinary. The same system that does this, that operates below consciousness, faster than thought, with no input from you, is also the system that holds your memories, that generates your emotions, that allows you to recognize a face you haven't seen in 20 years, or feel a mood shift when you walk into a particular room, or wake up at 3 in the morning with a solution to a problem you fell asleep still carrying. One system, an unimaginable range. Picture the nervous system as a country. At the center of that country, the capital, the place where everything ultimately gets decided, is the brain and spinal cord together. Researchers call this the central nervous system. It is where information is received, interpreted, and answered, where the raw data of experience becomes something that can be felt and understood and responded to. Spreading outward from that center, like roads running from a capital city into every corner of the land, is a peripheral nervous system. Every nerve in your arms and legs and face and organs, every signal traveling toward the brain from a world outside, every instruction traveling back out from the brain to the body, the entire communication infrastructure of a living human being. Together, these two systems form a loop that never closes. Information coming in, decisions going out, adjustments being made, corrections being calculated, every second of every hour of every day of your life, including right now, as you sit here watching this. The loop is running. You are, in a very real sense, never not thinking. Even in dreamless sleep, the brain is monitoring, maintaining, regulating, processing. It never fully stops. The lights never fully go out. Now let's go to the brain itself. Because the brain deserves more than a description. It deserves a moment of genuine awe. It weighs roughly the same as a small cantaloupe. It sits inside your skull in a bath of protective fluid, soft and pale and unimpressive to look at, a deeply folded mass of tissue that gives almost no outward indication of what it contains. What it contains is everything. Every word you know, every face you remember, every fear that has ever made your heart rate spike, every moment of joy that ever made you feel briefly, completely alive, every plan you have ever made, every dream you have ever had, every conversation you have ever carried on inside your own head, all of it lives there, encoded in connections between 100 billion cells, in a structure you could hold in 2 cup hands. It uses 20% of all the energy your body produces. 20%. For an organ that makes up barely 2% of your body weight. The brain is extraordinarily expensive to run, and the body pays a bill without complaint, because what the brain does in return is worth every calorie. The brain is divided into regions, each with its own role, each essential, each dependent on the others in ways that took researchers generations to map. The largest part, the cerebrum, the great wrinkled dome that gives the brain its familiar shape, is where your conscious life lives. Your thoughts happen here. Your memories are stored here. Your language is produced and understood here. Your personality, your humor, your capacity for love and rage and wonder, all of it is a cerebrum at work. The deep folds you see on the surface of a brain are not imperfections. They are an engineering solution, folding the surface over and over to pack as much thinking capacity as possible into the space available inside a skull. At the back, tucked underneath the cerebrum like a smaller, denser second brain, sits the cerebellum. This is the part of you that knows how to ride a bicycle even if you haven't ridden one in 15 years. The part that catches a glass before it falls without you deciding to catch it. Balance, coordination, the fluid, automatic grace of a body that knows how to move, that all comes from here. And at the base, connecting the brain to the spinal cord and to every system in the body below, is the brain stem. This is the oldest part of the brain, evolutionarily, the part that was already doing its job in our ancestors before anything resembling thought existed. It controls breathing, heartbeat, blood pressure, the rhythm of sleep and waking. It keeps you alive in the deepest, most fundamental sense, and it does so entirely without your knowledge or your help every moment you are alive. But none of this, not the brain, not the spinal cord, not any of it, could do anything without the cell that makes it all possible. The neuron. There are roughly 100 billion of them in your brain alone. Each one is a living cell with a specific architecture designed for one purpose, carrying message. At one end, branching structures called dendrites reach out like the roots of a tree, collecting incoming signals from the neurons around them. In the middle, the cell body receives those signals and processes them. And at the other end, a long, thin fiber called an axon carries the outgoing signal forward, sometimes just a fraction of a millimeter, sometimes the entire length of your spine, to the next neuron in the chain. The signal itself is electrical, a wave of charged particles moving along the membrane of the neuron at speeds that can reach over 400 kilometers per hour. The fastest signals in your nervous system are faster than a Formula One car. But here's the part that makes the whole system strange and beautiful. Neurons never touch each other. Between every two neurons in your brain there's a gap, microscopic, invisible, but real. And when an electrical signal reaches the end of one neuron and needs to cross to the next, electricity alone cannot cross that gap. Something else has to carry the message. So the neuron releases a chemical, a molecule specifically shaped to carry a specific kind of signal. It drifts across a gap, finds a receptor on the far side that is perfectly shaped to receive it, binds to it, and on the other side, a new electrical signal begins. These chemicals are called neurotransmitters, and they are, without exaggeration, the molecules your inner life is made of. Dopamine is the one most people have heard of, usually in the context of pleasure or addiction, but that framing undersells it dramatically. Dopamine is not really about pleasure. It is about anticipation, about the feeling of moving towards something you want. It is what makes you lean forward. What makes effort feel worthwhile? What makes tomorrow feel like it might be better than today? When dopamine is abundant and well-regulated, you feel motivated, focused, alive to possibility. When it falls, through illness, through exhaustion, through a life that has stopped offering genuine reward, the world goes flat. Effort loses its point. The future stops pulling. Serotonin sits alongside dopamine but does something quieter and more foundational. It is less about excitement and more about steadiness. The sense that things are all right, that the ground is solid under your feet, that you are safe. When serotonin is balanced, life feels manageable even when it is difficult. When it isn't, even small problems can feel catastrophic, which is why it sits at the center of most of what we understand about depression and anxiety. There is another neurotransmitter called GABA whose job is to slow things down, to quiet the noise, to prevent the brain from becoming so stimulated that it cannot function. Without GABA doing its work constantly in the background, the signals in your brain would build and amplify without limit. You would not be able to sleep. You would not be able to calm down. You would not be able to think clearly. GABA is the edit function, the necessary silence between the notes. And glutamate, the mirror opposite of GABA, is the excitatory signal, the thing that turns neurons on, that drives learning, that allows new connections to form between cells when something new is being understood or remembered. Every time you learn something, Really learn it. The way it lodges and stays, glutamate is part of the mechanism that makes it stick. Learning. That is worth dwelling on for a moment. Because the nervous system does not work the same way at the end of your life as it does at the beginning. It changes. It responds to what you do with it. The connections between neurons are not fixed at birth and left unchanged forever. They are dynamic, living, constantly being strengthened by use and weakened by neglect. Every time you practice something, a skill, a language, a piece of music, a way of thinking, the pathway of neurons that handles the activity fires together repeatedly, and each time it fires together, the connection between those cells grows slightly stronger, slightly faster, slightly more automatic. This is how a pianist's hand can move across keys too quickly for conscious thought to direct them. How a surgeon can perform a procedure that took years to learn with a calmness that looks, from the outside, like it was always easy. How a child learning to walk falls 1,000 times, and then one day simply doesn't fall anymore. The brain rewired itself, quietly, incrementally, in response to what was asked of it. And it will keep doing this, keep changing, keep adapting, keep building new pathways in response to new demands, for as long as it is given new demands to meet. The brain is not a fixed record of who you were when you were born. It is a living record of everything you have done since. Now we come to the part of the nervous system that operates furthest from your awareness and perhaps closest to your well-being. The autonomic nervous system. The part that runs entirely without your conscious input, managing the 1,000 variables of your internal world that you never think about and couldn't manually control even if you tried. Heart rate, digestion, blood pressure, the diameter of blood vessels, the chemical composition of the air in your lungs. Inside this system, two forces are always in conversation with each other. The first prepares you for danger. The moment your brain perceives a threat, real or imagined, physical or psychological, this branch of the system activates. Your heart rate climbs. Your breathing quickens. Your pupils widen to take in more light. Blood is pulled away from your digestive system and redirected to your muscles, because right now you don't need to digest, you need to run or fight. Adrenaline enters the bloodstream. Every system in your body orients toward survival. This response is extraordinary in an emergency. It has kept human beings alive through predators and disasters and dangers for hundreds of thousands of years. It is fast and effective and precisely calibrated for short, intense threats. The problem is that it was built for a world where threats were brief. The modern world delivers threats that never end. Financial worry, relationship tension, professional pressure, social anxiety, the constant low-level alertness of a life lived in front of screens delivering bad news. These are not emergencies the body can sprint away from, but the threat response activates anyway and stays activated because the brain cannot always tell the difference between a predator and a deadline. Chronic stress, the state of being held in an activated place for months or years, is one of the most damaging conditions a human nervous system can experience. It wears down the immune system. It disrupts sleep. It accelerates the aging of cells. It changes the structure of the brain itself over time in ways that make it harder to regulate emotion and easier to feel threatened. And the counterforce to all of this, the branch of the autonomic system that slows the heart, deepens the breath, returns blood to the organs of digestion and repair, signals to every cell in the body that the emergency is over and the work of restoration can begin, is available to you right now. It activates when you are genuinely safe, when you are with people you trust, when you sleep well, when you move your body gently and regularly, when you breathe slowly and deliberately, when you spend time in places that feel calm. The nervous system is not just something that happens to you. It is something that responds to how you live. And understanding it, really understanding it, the way you now do, is the first step toward living in a way that works with it rather than against it. Here is a thought worth sitting with at the end of all this. The nervous system is often described as a body's communication network, its control center, its information highway. All of those descriptions are accurate. All of them are also somehow insufficient. Because what the nervous system really is, when you step back far enough to see it whole, is the place where the physical and the conscious meet, where matter becomes experience, where a wave of electrical charge moving along a fiber becomes the smell of rain, the sound of a voice you love, the particular quality of light on a late afternoon in a place that felt like home. We do not yet fully understand how that happens, how the brain, a physical object made of cells, running on chemistry, produces a rich, subjective, interior experience of being alive. It is one of the deepest unsolved questions in science, perhaps the deepest. But we know this much. The 100 billion neurons in your brain, firing in patterns too complex to ever fully map, in conversation with each other across a trillion connections, shaped by everything you have ever done and everyone you have ever loved. That is not a machine running a program. That is a life experiencing itself. And the fact that you can sit here, watch this, understand what you're hearing, and feel something about it, wonder, or curiosity, or the quiet satisfaction of a thing becoming clear, is a nervous system doing what it has always done, turning the world into something that can be known. If this way of looking at the world, finding the extraordinary living inside the ordinary, is what you came here for, then this is your place. Subscribe, so you never miss one of these. It takes 2 seconds, and it means we can keep making them. And tell us in the comments, what part of this surprised you most? What did you know, and what changed? We read every single comment, and we always want to know what you're thinking. You said, this dolphin saw itself in a mirror. What happened next was unbelievable.